Live from our hurricane headquarters with real-time analysis from some of the nation's top meteorologists, this is Tracking the Tropics.
And we continue to track Tropical Storm Elsa. It is now setting its eyes on Cuba on this Monday morning. Meteorologist Amanda Hawley here joining you with the latest from the National Hurricane Center. The 11 a.m. advisory just came in. Here to break all of those details down for you, including a new track update. I'll go over all of that here in the next few minutes. And then meteorologist Ian Oliver will be joining me to help you answer some questions about maybe what we can expect here locally in the state of Florida, as Florida is still in the cone of uncertainty. We will likely be seeing some impacts, especially as we head into Tuesday evening through Wednesday. So let's get right into the latest update here. The maximum sustained winds remain at 65 miles per hour. That's not surprising here because it's really interacting with the mountainous terrain of Cuba. The satellite presentation, it's been ragged all morning long. We do have some shower and thunderstorm activity associated with it, but we've got, some outer bands here, some inner bands. We have not a whole lot of convection on the western side here. So it's a lopsided system. That's what I expect it to stay as we head into the next several days. And that's because it's really going to start to make its way across Cuba, and that's going to help to weaken it a little bit more as we go through the rest of the day today. And then as it makes its way into the Gulf of Mexico, while the waters are warm here, it's actually going to start to interact with some stronger upper level winds. That's going to help to prevent some re-strengthening. It will likely gain a little bit of strength. It does, the National Hurricane Center forecast here calls for it to maybe strengthen back up to about 65 mile per hour winds as it emerges from the Florida Straits. But that's about it. Those stronger upper level winds are really going to help to prevent any further strengthening of this system as it kind of brushes by the west coast of Florida. So really check out the timing here on this cone. This is 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, so a little less than 24 hours from now, sitting off the coast of really the Florida Keys here and off the coast of Naples. And then as we go a little bit farther out in time, this is 8 p.m. tomorrow, right off the coast of Sarasota, the Tampa Bay area, really. And that's when we'll be starting to feel those impacts here locally because, again, all of that convection, the shower thunderstorm activity, the tropical storm force winds, that's going to be placed on the east side. So that's when we're going to be feeling these impacts late tomorrow afternoon and then through the day, through at least the morning hours on Wednesday. But it's going to be moving pretty quickly still here. So we're not going to be talking about these impacts for very long because by 8 a.m. Wednesday, this storm is going to be making its way onshore and then it's going to be making its way up the southeastern coastline and then continuing on up into potentially just off the coast of the New England coastline, staying a tropical storm. And that's as we get into Friday and into Saturday of this upcoming week. But we've got a few days to get through before that happens. Again, just kind of zooming in on the latest track. It was shifted ever so slightly off to the west just based off the model consensus, which I will show you here in just a second. But again, the timing here, most impacts here in the Tampa Bay area will begin late tomorrow afternoon and last throughout the overnight hours, and conditions will be improving on Wednesday. So here's a look at the forecast models. You can kind of see they do spread out a little bit. They are in good consensus, but when we're talking about it being this close to the coastline, a few miles to the east versus a few miles to the west will make all the difference. So you can see there are still some that keep it out in the Gulf of Mexico, and a path this far out in the Gulf of Mexico would actually lead to few impacts in the Tampa Bay area. But if it's any closer to that, we will see those outer rain bands, kind of squally rain bands moving through. We will see the onshore winds. That'll lead to some storm surge near the coast, the threat for an isolated tornado, and of course the heavy rain. And of course we are very saturated here in the west coast of Florida, so any rain is going to lead to more saturation of the ground and possibly some flooding. And then of course the forecast models are all in agreement that it's going to take that curve off to the northeast and race back out into the Atlantic as we get into the end of the week. So locally, these are the impacts that I'm really expecting in the Tampa Bay area. Heavy rain, potentially between 3 and 6 inches, but the exact amounts will vary from location to location, and that could change over the next 24 hours depending on the exact path, how close that center of the storm gets. The tropical wind gusts, same kind of story. We are expecting some squally weather to come through. Along the coast, we'll probably see the strongest winds coming in off the Gulf of Mexico, but we could see some stronger wind gusts, especially inland as well, in some of those rain bands that move through. always with the tropical system, especially on the eastern side, can't rule out an isolated tornado threat. And then along the coast, we could be looking at sea level rises potentially between 2 and 4 feet. So I'm going to sit back down here and bring in meteorologist Ian Oliver. Thanks everyone for joining us here on this Monday morning edition of Tracking the Tropics, tracking Tropical Storm Elsa. Ian, you were here all weekend, keeping an eye on the latest. We're all kind of getting back into the zone after the holiday weekend. You know, what are your thoughts on the latest morning update?
It's really been kind of an odd system to track over the last 24 to 48 hours over the holiday weekend. A storm that's really never looked good on satellite. It struggled with its structure over the last couple days. It's been a lopsided storm. Interesting that in the latest discussion from the National Hurricane Center, tail Doppler on the Hurricane Hunter actually found that this center of circulation is still tilted, meaning that it's dealing with some wind shear. It's about to move onshore in Cuba. So there have been challenges with this. We're hoping we can see some significant weakening. That's a possibility as it moves over Cuba next 18 hours or so. But it's looking more and more likely, as we have a tropical storm warning now up, like we're going to see some tropical storm impacts here locally. But more and more, Amanda, this is looking like it's really going to be kind of a split event, whether you live on the coast here, you live in an inland spot. You'll probably remember this in two separate ways. Right,
and yeah, the coastal spots could experience that extra level of the sea level rise, but you know, inland spots, this isn't going to be anything that the Tampa Bay area hasn't experienced before, which is good news. But if you know, you get ready and you prepare today, you make sure you have all those preps in place, done by today, early tomorrow. This isn't something that, you know, any of us should really have an issue getting through over the next 48 to 72 hours. So we've got the West Coast impacts up here. We've got a couple questions coming in. Stacy asking #Hey Amanda, what should Broward feel? Of course, Broward being over on the other coast, and I do think that you know you could see some wind gusts, some slightly stronger winds over there, just gusty conditions. I wouldn't necessarily say tropical storm conditions, but it'll probably be a little bit breezy over on the other coast,
especially with the westward trend that we've seen here with this over the last couple of days. We've tiny shifts to the west. We saw that once again this morning. Forecast path was shifted just very slightly farther off to the west. And we should point out that this isn't, we talk about its lopsided structure, but it's not a big tropical storm at all. Tropical storm force winds extending out 70 miles.
Yeah.
That's a peanut by tropical cyclone standards. So the track matters a lot. How close to the west coast of Florida does it come? For folks over in Broward on the east coast, we're talking about a couple hundred miles. You could get a line of some gusty thunderstorms that come through and give you some nasty weather, at least briefly, but that's really not the direct impacts from the system.
Right, yeah, I think, you know, they're going to be a little bit closer to that center, and you can see the bullseye kind of here on the, this is just one model run of the rainfall accumulation, but you can see the bullseye in that west coast of Florida region. We'll probably get a good swath of 3 to maybe 6 inches, localized amounts possibly higher than that. But then the heavy amounts continue on with the storm as it moves up the southeastern coastline of the United States. That's the rainfall accumulation forecast. We can also throw up the sea level rise or that storm surge graphic, if you have that pulled up, Ian.
Here we go.
Yeah, okay, there we go. So I kind of zoomed in, and again, the blues maybe 1 to 3 feet or so, not expecting a whole lot because this isn't a very strong system. And we do have a couple questions coming in. I'll throw up on the screen here. This one coming in from Roberta, #Hey Ian, any chance it will strengthen?
Tiny bit in the extreme short term before that center of circulation moves onshore. But again, what we heard from the hurricane hunters was that the structure of the system isn't all that good. So that doesn't suggest that we're going to see much in terms of strengthening before the system moves onshore in Cuba. And then as Amanda mentioned, we've got all kinds of land, obviously, but also some higher terrain that'll help to disrupt that circulation over the next 18 hours. Then it's interesting once it emerges into the southeastern Gulf of Mexico, because you have conflicting factors. One, it's back over warm sea surface temperatures, which is what fuels tropical systems, but the forecast is for the wind shear to pick up, which will push on this system even more as it's struggled with its structure over the last couple days. It doesn't get it any easier for Elsa as it moves up through the eastern Gulf of Mexico. So that'll be interesting. Short answer is most likely scenario here is a middle of the road tropical storm. What's still to be decided is how close to us that middle of the road tropical storm comes. Likely close enough that it's going to give us some issues in our coastal spots, some gusty showers, some thunderstorms inland with that possibility of flooding and isolated tornadoes, but mostly this will keep the higher impacts with this to coastal spots, and we hope we can avoid those.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a question I've been getting all weekend. Several people have messaged me. I've seen it, passing through on Facebook. What about flights? This one coming in from Nikki, hashtag saying, hey Ian, are Tuesday flights at TPA Airport affected? And the short answer to this is most likely Tuesday night into Wednesday. We'll see some flight cancellations, maybe some delays here, but it's a little too early to tell which exact ones.
Yeah, early part of the day tomorrow, I would not think so, to be honest. As we move into the evening hours and the winds pick up, the coverage of the showers and storms picks up, you may see some delays or cancellations. I think the threshold is somewhere in the mid-40s for wind speeds. So again, it's going to depend on the exact path of this system over the next day or so. If it stays farther off to the west, cheats a little bit farther, the trend continues with the forecast models, maybe we can avoid at least those sustained tropical storm conditions, and then
they'll be able to get off the flights, in between some of those passing rain bands. And we deal with that every day here in Florida with the passing thunderstorms.
Like
they got to deal with that.
Yeah, Saturday was a rough day across the area. Those storms were brutal and incessant. Of course, that kind of adds to the threat a little bit because we've seen so much rain lately. But conversely, the reverse could happen, and we could see that center of circulation come a little bit closer to us, and that could be more disruptive a latter portion of the day tomorrow. But first, if you're flying out first thing or during the morning, I wouldn't expect any trouble.
And I know, Ian, you kind of have to get to our next phone call here to kind of update everyone on the impacts that we're going to be feeling. So I want to let you hop off the call. I'll continue to answer a few questions. Again, you can use the hashtag HeyAmanda in the comments, and we can talk about our local impacts here in the Bay Area.
Sounds good. We'll see you at 2 and 5.
Thanks so much, Ian. Yes, we're going to have another episode update coming up at 2 p.m. Of course, that's an intermediate update from the National Hurricane Center. 5 p.m. will be another track update from the National Hurricane Center as well. But as we head throughout the day today, it's really just going to be how is Cuba impacting the storm and what is it going to look like on the other side of that mountainous terrain? Will we see a center, position movement, and that could change the track as well. So that, again, just a couple of miles east or west will make all the difference in our impacts here in the Tampa Bay area, and the farther up as well, farther up the peninsula of Florida and potentially into the Big Bend region. But this is the infrared satellite that we're looking at right now. The kind of the reds that you see there, the flashing, that's Elsa. That is Tropical Storm Elsa. And if we zoom in a little bit more, it's a little bit more detailed for you. The latest update, if you're just joining us from the National Hurricane Center, maximum winds are at 65 miles per hour. It remains a tropical storm. It's still moving off to the northwest at about 14 miles per hour. So that's still a pretty fast pace for a tropical system. That's good news because we're not expecting any kind of big slowdowns. I know we've seen that with several systems in the past several years. This is not going to be that. This is going to continue to move off to the northwest. We're going to see it turn off to the north and then curve off to the northeast over the next 48 to 72 hours. So right now, again, the northern side is being impacted by the mountainous terrain. The center will move over the coast of Cuba. As we head through the day today, it's going to take its time and it will re-emerge off the coast overnight tonight. And again, what it looks like on the other side will make all the difference, and our impacts here in the Tampa Bay area will become pretty clear as we head into tomorrow morning. But as we go through the day, we're going to be really hashing out the details. How far off the coast is it going to be? The farther off the coast, obviously the strongest winds and the heaviest rain will kind of stay confined to that center, but it is a lopsided system. So we're still going to see most of the shower and thunderstorm activity on the east side, which is where the Florida Peninsula will be located in relation to the center. And you can kind of see the direction that those icons are spinning. That is the wind direction. So we are going to be dealing with a little bit of push of some water. So our coastal areas, we are going to be talking about a potential for a little bit of some sea level rise, some storm surge. I know we had that question coming in here earlier. Hashtag Cynthia Martinez saying, hashtag Hey Amanda, what about Bradenton? You guys are on the coast. You guys should expect some heavy rains as we go into Tuesday night and into Wednesday, as well as the potential for that sea level rise if you are on the coast. Couple other questions coming in here. More questions about flights. Linda saying, hashtag, hey Amanda, what if you're flying out of Orlando Tuesday night? Again, you're really going to have to pay attention to your airlines at this point, because there is the potential that they may see the tropical weather coming in, and they may decide to cancel flights or delay them, or divert them to other places. So this is at this point, if you have flights in the Tampa, Orlando, Fort Myers, Miami area over the Tuesday night and into Wednesday, you really got to check in with your flights, because they're going to be the ones that are going to be making those decisions. Like Ian said earlier, potentially mid 40s, I think, is when they start to think about talking about the delaying the flights and seeing if there's a break in the weather to where they could get those flights off the ground. But you'll definitely want to, if you have a flight out of Orlando Tuesday night, you'll want to keep an eye on that. Michelle saying, hashtag, hey Amanda, Northport expected to have wind tornado. So this is something that Lee Spann and I have been talking about all morning, the potential for isolated tornadoes. We're going to be on the eastern side of the system, so we do have to have that low risk in there. We're going to be on the right side of the storm. We can't rule out some water spouts moving ashore in some of those stronger rain bands, and quick spin up tornadoes happen in some of those tropical squally rain bands as well. They're really hard to see on radar. We will be tracking them with Max Defender 8 radar, absolutely, especially as the storm kind of rides along our coast, up along the west coast of Florida. We will be using Max Defender 8 radar to kind of pinpoint where those areas of rotation are. But yes, the chance is there. Is it low? Yes, but it's not 0%. So you have to be on the lookout for that. That's why we say it's always a good idea to have that weather radio on hand. So if alert is issued, you will get it to your phone. Our WFLA weather app is great as well to have alerts get to you if you need them. Stephanie Martinez saying, hashtag, hey Amanda, has a prior storm resembled this one and turned worse at the last minute? So the most recent system that is taking a very similar path here would be Ada from last November. Now that system did end up becoming a very weak Category 1 hurricane off of our coastline briefly. And that wasn't necessarily unexpected, because we always say you have to prepare for at least one category above or one category below. That's always in the realm of possibilities. That's the range of error from the National Hurricane Center. So Stephanie, Ada last year, it brought a lot of rain to some parts of the area. We had those tropical squally rain bands move through. Some people did experience freshwater flooding as well as the storm surge. We had a good storm surge come through with Ada. It just timed out right, because the center of the storm kind of took a path right where the red line is on the center of your screen here. And the center stayed just offshore. That means that on the southern side of it, all of the wind was kind of pushing the water up along the coast, and that it literally pushes the water in the Gulf of Mexico. The winds push the tops of the waves into our bays and rivers, and that actually rises the water level. So that's what storm surge is. We're not expecting a lot of storm surge with this system. It's nothing like what we would have seen with Laura or any kind of other major storm. Nothing that we can't handle, but it is something, if you live along the coast, this is something that you have to prepare for. 3 feet of storm surge can, move into people's houses, and it's salt water, and that can cause damage. So that's something that you have to think about if you are vulnerable to sea level rise. Now, freshwater flooding, that can be anywhere in the Tampa Bay area. So that's hopefully answers your question there, Stephanie. Thanks for all the questions coming in on this Monday morning. Time now is about 11:27. We just got the latest track in from the National Hurricane Center. I'll kind of zoom out here, give you an idea of where it's going to head after this. It is going to kind of make its way up the southeastern coastline of the United States, and because it will still be closer to the Atlantic, it does look like it will hold some of its organization together and bring all of that rain, bring some of that wind with it through the Carolinas, through Georgia, and then off the coast again, and then potentially re-strengthening back into that tropical storm with those winds at around 45 miles per hour by Friday and into Saturday. But of course, locally, we've got to get through the Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night time frame for Elsa to be out of our hair. This isn't going to be a very long-lasting event. Again, conditions will start to probably deteriorate. I don't really like to use that word because this isn't going to be a very strong system coming in. Will some of you be impacted by this? Yes. What we're talking about, again, are the heavy rains on our already saturated grounds. So wind gusts maybe in the 40 to 60 mile per hour range right along the coast. And that could be on the high end there. But it's not going to take much wind to topple trees. And trees can fall on power lines, they can fall on houses and things like that. So that's what you should be concerned about as we go through the next 48 hours. Look around your house. If there's any vulnerable trees that you think, could topple, you want to make sure you're not in the vicinity of that while this storm kind of passes through, because those grounds are so wet, so it's not going to take a lot of wind to kind of topple any of these trees. Otherwise, again, the isolated tornadoes will be a threat across basically the west coast of Florida here. The heavy rains, we've talked about the storm surge, and the tropical winds. We've got kind of all modes of the tropical weather, if you will. And the exact impacts, the exact wind speeds, the exact amount of rain, the exact height of the storm surge, it's all going to depend exactly where that center goes. This is what we said with Eta last year. If it takes a path that's more out in the Gulf of Mexico, we will see fewer impacts here at the coast. Clearly, all of the strongest winds will stay over the Gulf of Mexico. But if it is closer to our coastline, we're going to see more of that tropical squally weather Tuesday night and into the Wednesday time frame. A couple of good questions coming in. I just saw one last call for questions here. Just saw this one come in from Denise Hart, and it's a good one. I do want to throw it up on screen here. I hope I didn't lose it. It was a question about how far storm surge actually travels inland. And that is actually a great question, because that's what evacuation zones are based off of. Storm surge can travel far inland if the height is great enough, right? If the water is being pushed and it has room to go farther inland, and there's enough push of that water, it's going to keep going inland. So that's why we always evacuate for water. That's what the evacuation zones are based out of. So if you live in an evacuation zone, that theoretically means that salt water can get to you in your home, because you live in that evacuation zone. That's why we say it's very important to know what your zone is and if you live in a zone at all. Couple questions coming in about flood advisories. We will likely see some of those flood advisories posted. I know we do have, we just got a flood of new advisories coming in. Ian mentioned it. New tropical storm warnings are now in effect. That was not a surprise. We had tropical storm watches in effect, but because we're getting closer to the event, they were just upgraded to warnings. A watch means that tropical storm conditions are possible within 48 hours. A tropical storm warning means that tropical storm conditions are possible in 36 hours. So you're just getting closer to that time frame. The storm surge watches, they'll likely be upgraded to storm surge warnings as well. So we do have several flood advisories already in effect. We have a flood watch in effect right now, and I'm just making sure I'm getting my counties right for our area. Flood watch in effect for Sarasota, Hillsborough, Pinellas, Manatee, Charlotte, and Lee counties as we head through late Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning. And again, that's because we're going to see the potential for 3, maybe up to 6 inches of rain. It's going to be localized pockets of up to 6 inches of rain. And again, that estimate could change based on what Elsa looks like after Cuba. So wanted to get those flood alerts out to you there. Leanne, for that question. Isaac Banks got a good question here saying hashtag hey Amanda, we hope tropical storm Elsa will not be able to get near us of my area in the triad of Greensboro, North Carolina. At this point, it looks like it'll still be a pretty lopsided system moving through the Carolinas. You may have some gusty winds as you head into Thursday, maybe late Wednesday and into Thursday, but looks like you should be okay there in Greensboro. So thanks everyone. Really appreciate your questions. We are going to have more episodes of Tracking the Tropics coming up today at 2 p.m. and at 5 p.m. And then tomorrow, we're actually going to have even more episodes than that with the National Hurricane Center advisories. And tomorrow I'm going to detail a little bit more. We've got a couple questions coming in Plant City area, Lake County, exact cities at this point. Tomorrow I'm going to have a full suite of graphics for you to kind of give you pinpoint locations of what we can expect where, and that would include specific counties and specific areas, and we can get a little bit closer into those details. But for now, I'm going to leave you with this final thought. As we head through Tuesday night and into Wednesday, here in the Tampa Bay area, heavy rain between 3 and 6 inches could potentially fall in localized areas. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot on top of our very saturated ground. So flooding could be an issue. Flash flooding could be an issue as well. We'll be watching for some of those rivers to be rising. Tropical wind gusts will come in. The exact strength is going to depend on where that center is in relation to you. So the tropical wind gusts, could be anywhere between 40, maybe up to 60 miles per hour. And there'll be stronger gusts in some of those tropical rain bands as well. Within the tropical rain bands, yes, we have an isolated tornado threat here in the Tampa Bay area. That would include basically the entire west coast of Florida, because we're going to be on that eastern side of the storm, as long as that center stays offshore. So we'll be watching for the threat for isolated tornadoes and the storm surge, the sea level rise between 2 and 4 feet along Florida's west coast. That's the impacts, the 4 main impacts that we're going to be watching as we head into Tuesday night and into Wednesday. That is the time frame for us here in the Tampa Bay area. Not going to be a long-lasting event here. Conditions starting to go downhill as we head into tomorrow afternoon. We'll see some of those squally rain bands come through. Today in the Tampa Bay area, we're actually going to see thunderstorms develop, but they're going to be afternoon thunderstorms developing inland and kind of drifting toward the coast this evening. Watch for that if you're doing any preps outside. But tomorrow, the thunderstorms that we see roll through will be the tropical squally weather from Elsa. So that's what I want to leave you with as we close out this episode of Tracking the Tropics. Thanks everyone for joining me here. Hopefully we answered some of your questions, and we'll continue to be, doing these as we go throughout the day today and throughout the event. So no worries. This is something that we could definitely get through. You just want to make sure you have your preparations in place today. I know a lot of people off work today in observation of July 4th. Don't let this go by. You want to make sure you're continuing to check in, because while we're not expecting a very strong Elsa, it's not going to gain that much strength as it reemerges from Cuba. You want to check back in just in case as we head through the 2 p.m. advisory today, the 5 p.m. advisory this evening, and especially as we head into tomorrow. So thank you again, everyone, for watching. We will be back here at 2 p.m.
Thank you for watching Tracking the Tropics.